It's Reality Check with Craig Price.
I'm an idiot.
4 minutes in and I'm already wrong.
I'm like a monkey. Hello, look at me. Craig, shut up.
Hey, I need you guys to do these things.
You're like a beautiful mind. I'm more like Forrest Gump. So
It's Reality Check with Craig Price. I am your host, Craig Price, and this week, Wally Hauck, PhD, joins me to talk about feedback. Now, I'm always a bit suspicious when it comes to feedback. In my line of work, I meet far too many motivational speaker types that think they need to tell me only the things that I'm doing right, when I'm much more interested in what I'm not doing right. Because let's be honest, if I'm doing it right, I will continue to do so. In fact, if you only point out what I'm doing right, I will become overly focused on it, and then subconsciously, I'm going to change what I'm doing. Because I'd much prefer to know where the flaws are so I can change, because I'm going to change something. I mean, that's just the way I work. I'm constantly changing and evolving and organically growing. So if I'm going to change something, it might be as well be as what I'm doing wrong. But in polite society, a lot of people just don't want to give that honest feedback. They'd much rather just say, oh, you did a great job, pat you on the head, and send you on your way. And then, as Wally will talk about, some people don't even know the difference between feedback and criticism. But before we get to Wally, feedback and criticism are common themes in my book, Half a Glass, The Realist Guide. And I bring this up because I have partnered with Short Circuit Media to offer up free copies of my book. So if you haven't read my book, shame on you. If you have read my book, thank you very much. But here's a chance to introduce this book to other people without having to spend any money. All you have to do is you head over to realist-revolution.com and you sign up and you can get the book for free. It's sent chapter by chapter over about 8 weeks. There's no catch. You just sign up and you get the free book. It just pops up once a week in your email. You download it and you can read it from there. Also, if you go to the website, there's some videos that we've created that kind of explain each chapter. They're not your typical videos. They're kind of goofy. They're kind of fun, like the book. If you've read the book, you'll see that it's not your typical self-help motivational BS. It's a little different. It's a little more unusual, a little more straightforward, and hopefully a little more funny than you're used to. So if you head over to realist-revolution.com, get a free book. There, I've shielded myself long enough. Let's get back to feedback with Wally Hauck. I've always found that feedback has been kind of a weird thing for people because they give different types of feedback depending on the situation, which is, I like to give the same feedback all the time. But face-to-face feedback can be different than like a performance review versus internet feedback. So why do people have so many things when they think about feedback? Why is it so difficult to give feedback consistently?
Yeah, that's an interesting way to think about it. Why is it so difficult to get feedback? I think there's a number of different reasons. Let me give you 2 reasons why I think it might be difficult for people to get regular feedback. Number one is something that you mentioned, and that is what I call the context. The context of feedback is very often the performance review. And the performance review is sets up a relationship between the employee and the manager that makes it very difficult to give feedback back and forth. Because most people don't draw this, and here's the second reason. Most people don't draw a distinction between what I call feedback and criticism. Feedback is data from a process. That's my definition. That's the dictionary definition. So I think of feedback as data. We are talking about feedback. That's data. We are going to talk on this. We're going to have a discussion for about 30 minutes. That's data. What you think about me, what you think about what I say, those are your opinions. So drawing a distinction between data and opinion or criticism is absolutely critical. So what people want is feedback, which is usually data, which helps them to learn. Very often, or let me say it a different way, very infrequently do they want criticism unless they really trust the person. And a lot of research that I do shows that for example, trust is very low. When I say very low, it's less than 50% in most cases between the manager and the employee. And in large part, it's because the manager is charged with giving opinion about the employee. And opinion about the employee, when it's not solicited, tends to damage trust. So between the context of criticism and the lack of clarity between the two words, feedback and criticism, it damages trust, and it makes it really hard for managers to feel comfortable to give feedback, and it makes it even more difficult for employees to hear feedback because they really don't want to hear the criticism. They want to hear something helpful that they can learn. And so those are the two major reasons that I see that feedback is so difficult.
So they're really looking for objective data versus subjective. And, I'm here with Dr. Wally Hauck. I just messed this up. Dr. Wally Hauck? Hauck? I told you, Hauck. I told you the prescription drugs are kicking in. I'm here with Dr. Wally Hauck, and you're going to be giving a presentation called Fearless Feedback at the IPMA Eastern Region conference, June 25th, which unfortunately I'm going to miss. I don't get there till the 26th, so I'm glad I got you here because I really believe in feedback. The difference that you just said, though, is I'm also not that afraid of criticisms. I know a lot of people don't like to get the criticisms because it does destroy trust. When you get the different types of feedback, there's that direct feedback is hard to get, that face-to-face feedback. Why is it so difficult for people to say what they feel face-to-face versus like internet, where feedback usually is unwanted and unnecessary? And so but I just read an article where they said if you text somebody and they're more likely to give honest feedback through a text than they are face-to-face.
Yeah, I'm not, well, that's interesting. I'm not familiar with that particular data, but what I would say is that if there's a high level of trust that you're willing to receive both feedback and criticism from a person, and depending upon the level of self-esteem that you might have, you might be willing to hear criticisms from others. But when the criticism comes from, let's say it comes from the internet, you can dismiss it very easily. You can say, well, I don't really know that person. They can have their opinion. I'm not going to listen to them. But if it's your boss and that opinion by him or her is going to go into your file and it's going to have an impact on whether or not you might be considered for promotion, and if it's going to be considered a factor in whether or not you're going to get a raise, which a lot of organizations do. Now, IPMA, the Public Managers Association, very often they don't have pay for performance. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But very often it's, the criticisms from your boss have some impact on whether or not you're going to be considered for promotion. And if that goes in your file, that's a very different context. It's a very different environment, very different consequences than somebody that just sends you an email and says, I heard you speak on this interview with Wally Hauck, and you could have asked better questions, Craig. Come on, you could have really, you could have really been tough on him, and you were so easy on him. You could dismiss that because there's no consequences for that.
Well, I was gonna bring this up. One of the times I've gotten feedback, I don't really know if it was feedback because sometimes feedback is disguised as criticism, but it's also sometimes feedback can be kind of too vague and pointless. I was told that one of the persons gave me feedback unsolicited, and it was basically, I listened to 30 of your shows, which tells me that it's obviously not bad enough for them to turn off. So
Right.
Listen to 30 of them. What you need to do is change your entire personality.
Okay,
if you can do everything completely different.
There you go. But that's a combination of feedback and criticism. The feedback is, I've listened to 30 of your shows. Okay, so they obviously know you, and there must be some value that they're getting there. So that's the data. The criticism is their opinion that you need to change your personality. I mean, so who are they to tell you that? There's no consequences. And not only that, but here's the other missing piece with criticism is rarely does it give you a new method. It only tells you what you've done wrong. Now, if if we hang up the phone, then you call me back and say, "Hey, Wally, how do you think I did there?"
Well, I
Then
screwed up your name.
You're soliciting my opinion. That's very different than somebody sending you an email blind that that gives their opinion, and you didn't ask for it. And you not only that, but they're not telling you how to change the personality. There's
Right.
no method there. There's no learning there. So the key for feedback, and that's why I call it fearless feedback. There's two keys. One is you make it fearless, meaning that if there's any fear at all, the people will not accept it. It's like a gift. You could give somebody a gift, but if they don't, give them an ugly tie. If they don't like the tie, they're not going to wear it. If they don't wear it, what good is the gift? So if you have to have a fearless environment such that the person is willing to accept and then take action. And very often criticism doesn't do it. In fact, think about this. Think about criticizing, your spouse. Say to them, the old joke, say to your significant other tonight, "Hey, honey, I heard about performance reviews today. I just had my performance review at work. I think it's time for your performance review, and I've got some ideas for you on how you can improve your performance here in the house and, when we're out together, and see how far, do that and see how far you'd get."
Oh, I know how far I'd get. I'd get as far as the couch.
Yeah.
That would be it. I'd be barred from pretty much the main part of the east wing of the house, as they'd say.
So that's why feedback has to be without fear, and then it's got to be data-based so the person can accept it as a gift and then take action on it. And therefore it has to be not about them personally. It really has to be about their method. There's a difference between a person's method or a person's process and the person themselves. This guy that said he wants you to change your personality, well, that's about you. It's not about your process at all. If he had said, what would be really helpful to people like me who have people reporting to me is if you ask these types of questions, Craig. If you ask these types of questions, then I could really learn a lot more, and that would really be helpful for people like me. See, that would be a process suggestion. That's not a change your personality suggestion. So that's the difference. The language is absolutely critical when you deliver feedback, is to make that distinction, those distinctions.
So how can we make sure that our feedback isn't slowly creeping towards the criticism side? Because a lot of people, when we just talk, we may not understand that what we're giving them isn't necessarily feedback, it's criticism, even though we feel it's. So is there a process that we can go in ahead of time to make sure that we don't accidentally fall into that criticism category?
Yeah, I love that question. It's a great question. That's a process question, and absolutely there is. Here's a great way to do it. If you're going to have a conversation with somebody and you want to improve performance, then you have a set of agreements right up front, and you can say to them, look, if I give you feedback and it feels disrespectful, I want you to tell me. See, because criticism that's unsolicited or that has to do with changing my personality or some other language that feels like an attack, it's going to feel disrespectful. If I do that, I want you to tell me because I want to stop. I may make that mistake. Just let me know that I made that mistake, and then I'll change my language, because that's not my intention. My intention is that we look at process and method, not you. And so let me know if you think, and I want you to tell me if you think I'm wrong. That's okay. Let's have a discussion and let's come up with some agreements. So I have this, one of the words that I like to use is facilitating agreements, phrase I should say, not word, facilitating agreements. What a manager and an employee should do is they should be closer to partners than than the manager being an authority figure. See, when the authority figure gives a grade to the employee, that's a one-up. That means the manager has power over that employee. Well, that's not working so well. That's not working so well in any of our organizations. Maybe when the general on the battlefield in Iraq has to tell the troops exactly what to do in order to save lives. Okay, that might be a great place. But when it's, you're making Subway sandwiches in a franchise and you want to make sure that everybody who comes in the door is happy with the customer service and with the product, you want to talk about process, because nobody's going to die from having a sandwich or having a sandwich late. So it's about having closer to a partnership. So you facilitate agreements with each other. And in order to facilitate agreements, you have to have high trust. So both people are responsible for creating that trust between the two of them. And the manager can set up some rules or regulations, or set up some ground rules and say, look, if I mess up, I want you to tell me. And if you mess up, I want the permission to tell you if we feel we're getting disrespectful with each other. Would that be okay? That's an example of facilitating agreements. So there's some ground rules that you set up, and then you can have complete open and honest discussions, which you need in order to optimize processes in order to serve customers or to serve participants or to serve, whoever, clients, whatever the word is that you use to in your organization or business.
Sure. Now, do you find that the ability to take feedback and use it, or at least receive feedback, is there any generational situation? Because I feel like maybe younger workers are not maybe used to the feedback. They're much more used to the praise, not even criticism. They're just always being told how well they're doing. Have you found any generational issues with feedback?
I appreciate that question. I'm not, let me say right now, I'm not a generational expert. In fact, I think it's a bit of a misnomer because people are people. Now, maybe they've got different language or different, words that they use, generational words that we used to say, I'm going to age myself now. I grew up in the 60s, so we said groovy. Well, you don't hear groovy anymore. Okay, so maybe you hear awesome today, or maybe that's even outdated. I'm not sure what the right word is. So
yeah, I wouldn't forward with that, because you're just digging a age hole the farther you go.
Okay, all right. So so let me stop right now.
I'm waiting for you to say grody, and then
okay, I don't even know what that means. All right,
that's all right.
So it's not. People are people. If you do research about what motivates people, or what the buzzword today is engage people, it's always the same 5 or 6 things. And it's never money. Money is a control factor. It's about being challenged. It's about getting feedback on that challenge. It's about having a sense of progress. It's also about having a sense of purpose in what you do. And it's having choice in what you do. You take those 5 things, and I don't care what generation you are, you can motivate people. You can engage people in tasks, in process, in improvement, in performance. If you create the environment that delivers, now you've got to customize it for them. But is it generational? I don't know. I don't know if it is. I know that those 5 key engagement factors are not generational. That's a complete misnomer. But do you change the language a little bit? Okay, maybe. Do you explain a little bit differently? Yes, maybe. But you do that for anybody because everybody is unique. So it's not even about generations. You have to do it for each individual person. So my tone of voice right now, I'm sounding like I'm getting excited, right? I'm sounding passionate. That might come across to one person as being passionate and exciting, and it might come across to someone else as being disrespectful. Well, I've got to get that feedback from that person. So I don't think it has anything to do with the generation at all. It has to do with good, honest, truthful, trustworthy communication that has to do with process and method and performance, and not about the person themselves. Let the person be in charge of their own improvement. Let them ask questions. That's what you're doing right now. You're learning by asking me questions, and I'm learning by hearing your questions and you responding. What more can we ask for?
Well, I know that the certain times that feedback is required, but it's difficult to give. So we're in a situation where, we'll put this out there, we're in a situation where we have to give feedback, but we kind of know what the reaction is going to be, even though we go through process. How can we give better feedback knowing that we may be stepping on some landmines just because we do know the person. There's trust built, but we know that their reactions. We've worked with them for years. We know how they react at certain things. But this feedback has to be told, because if we don't tell them there's an issue, it'll never get resolved.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you a good. Let's take a specific example for those who might be listening. My daughter, she's 21 now. She said to me the other day. She said, Dad, I'm thinking about moving south. And I said, what do you mean? What do you mean you're thinking about moving south? You can't think about that. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. You've got to do this. You've got to do that. And I just went on a complete, I panicked because I don't want her to move south. And I overreacted. And because she and I have this kind of relationship, and we have ground rules, she said, Dad, what I'm hearing is you're overreacting. And you always wanted me to tell you when you're overreacting. And so I just want you to know. Now, see, that's an example of giving feedback based on ground rules ahead of time, and that's the point I was attempting to make earlier, is you set up ground rules so that you know that when you do have that difficult situation, not only, now it may be still challenging to do it, but you've agreed to do it, even if it is challenging, so you don't avoid it, which is really what managers do today. They avoid giving this feedback. Why? Because it is difficult and there's no ground rules, and the context is wrong. The context is it's going to sound like criticism, when in fact it can be delivered like feedback or data. So those are the three key factors: is you have ground rules that you set up ahead of time, you have the right context that gets created by both the manager and the employee, you talk about process, and then you make agreements that say, if this happens, you're obligated to give me that feedback, and I'm obligated to give you that feedback. So does it ever make it easy? No, but you better do it because you've already agreed to do it.
Now that leads me into when someone says, and you were talking about building trust and it turning from feedback to criticism is when there is trust. When someone says, I want your honest opinion,
sure,
how can you deliver that without crushing their soul and their dreams?
Well,
I mean, you can do that. There's a lot of ways you can do it. But I mean, if you have criticism that you know is going to be, it's no longer about process. It's now they're asking for my opinion. Now they are asking for criticism because there is that trust there. How can we deliver that nicer?
Well, I've got a 4-letter word for you, and it's love. You deliver it with love, or you could say you deliver it with respect. And love is kind of, it's a little too touchy-feely for the business world or for the government world, but truly that's what you do. You deliver it the way you would like it to be delivered to you, which is through love. So you want my honest feedback. Okay, tell me why, and tell me what you're going to do with this. Well, so you can have a conversation. You can ask questions. In fact, you can even put the one way to deliver really difficult feedback or in this case opinion or criticism is with questions. What if I told you that your presentation the other day was poor? Is that what you want? Is that the kind of feedback that you want right now? You want me to tell you what I really think, that I really felt like it was poor? Let me tell you why I thought that, because of this, and this. Now, the other piece to answer your question, Craig, is tone of voice is absolutely critical, and also body language if it's face-to-face, absolutely critical. So tone of voice and body language make up 93% of the message. So if you deliver the tone and body language with love and with caring and with respect, and they've asked for the opinion, you've got a formula where they're really, sincerely listening, and you're not going to get in trouble if they're really sincerely listening.
And I've been in situations where it's through no fault of their own. Some people don't understand tone of voice. They're like Spock. They only have one tone. They're monotone their entire lives. Even when they're upset, they're talking in the same way they do. So sometimes it's important that you, I guess, craft the message a little bit as well. So that not only is it just tone, which is a huge part of it, but in case there are these, and I've run into them, I call them Vulcans. They're just monochromatic people who really don't have a variation, and it's very difficult for them to give criticism without sounding like they're being mean.
Right.
But sometimes you have to listen to what they're saying, not necessarily the tone.
Well, and if you have these ground rules set up ahead of time, you can say to them, hey, the way you delivered that, it was a little bit harsh. Your tone of voice was a little harsh for me there. So, I just want you to know. So there's no reason why you can't give feedback back and forth with somebody, especially if you have these ground rules set up. And see, that would be a learning for that person as well, because if their tone is harsh, then you're not really listening to them. If you're not listening to them, then you're refusing the gift that they're giving you. So,
now,
and what good is that gift?
If they can't use it, it's not that great. It's just taking up room. Now,
there's no learning. There's no learning.
Now, I noticed that your program's a little different than normal, where it's not about changing people, which is why I appreciated it. I saw that because I think far too many things out there, too many seminars and workshops and things like that are all about changing who you are. Well, it's changing who you are and changing other people. And first off, you can't change other people because it's hard enough to change yourself. And no one. So what makes your program different than other feedback programs?
Well, there's some very specific tools, and I appreciate what you're saying. If I understand what you're saying, Craig, it's if you do want, let me see if you agree with this. It is about changing the process or method that you use to deliver feedback. So, and I have some very specific tools to do that. And if you use those tools, then what ends up happening is your behavior changes, and when your behavior changes, then behavior of others change. So Gandhi said that we must become the change we seek. So if we're looking for performance improvement from others, we have to change our method of delivery of feedback in order to get that performance shift that we're looking for, because the current methods that we use, which tend to be control methods, really don't work very well anymore, not in the knowledge economy. They used to work well when people had menial tasks that they had to do every day, in assembly line type work. But even assembly line type work today requires tremendous problem solving and critical thinking skills. And as long as those skills now in the knowledge economy are more important, then telling people what to do and threatening them or trying to control them with bribes is just not going to work as effectively as influencing them and being a partnership and talking about process. So my presentation is about using specific tools. I'll give you one tool. May I give you one tool?
Oh, sure. You can give as many as you'd like. Okay.
Well, one tool I call the white flag. And the white flag is it's the international sign for truce. It's also surrender. People say, well, what does a white flag mean? It means surrender. Well, in this instance, it's called a truce, which means that when you feel that you've been disrespected, you can call a white flag. A white flag means, don't shoot me. I have feedback for you. The ground rules that we agreed upon originally, which have to do with treating each other with respect, you've unintentionally broken those, and I just want to bring it to your attention. So you can set up a white flag agreement between you and your toughest employees. And by doing that, because very often your toughest employees are being treated in a way by you that feel disrespectful to them, and you're totally unaware that you're doing it. So they tell you what you're doing that needs to stop or needs to start. They tell you, they give you feedback first, and you can change that, and then the whole relationship shifts. So white flag is a great way to open up a conversation and tell the truth about something that's a difficult conversation. So that's an example of one of the tools, and that's what makes this this fearless feedback a little bit different.
I wish they would do that in the media, because unfortunately I think a lot of people watch television news and they're kind of trained to give an opinion, stand by it no matter what, attack, never give in. And so this white flag scenario, which they forget that you can use, they don't get to see it when they watch the news. They forget that they can take these tools back with them into the real world.
That's right. That's right. They could do it later. You could do it at any time. That's right. Exactly. Yep.
And I also
and people can save face. Both people save face that way. So because it's an honest mistake. We all make honest mistakes. We all overreact in certain situations, and we can all often behave, or at least sometimes behave, in ways that we regret. But we want to be forgiven because we're all human. We make mistakes. We have flaws. So this is a good way to be forgiven and to move on and to change whatever you want to change and to maintain that relationship.
Well, I'm sure I've made quite a few mistakes here today, and I want to thank you for coming on the show. Please, I think I only messed up your name, but I'm going to say it right this time. Dr. Wally Hauck is here. He's going to be on June 25th in Hyannis, Massachusetts at the IPMA. You're giving a breakout session called Fearless Feedback. I hope you have a chance to go. Where can people find you?
www.wallyhauck.com, WALLYHAUCK.com, or OptimumLeadership.com.
And we'll look forward to seeing your presentation in June. And I really appreciate you taking time out to come on the show. My feedback is I really appreciate it, even though that's criticism.
No, that's great. That's great feedback, Craig, and I really appreciate your questions too. And thanks. So I look forward to hearing your presentation as well up there at IPMA.
I want to thank my guest, Wally Hauck, PhD, for coming on. Since the whole show is about feedback, how about you give me some? Craig at speakercraigprice.com. Send questions, comments, guest requests. Or how about iTunes? Head over there. I'd love some 5-star ratings or a witty comment saying how much you like the show. Negative feedback is not necessary at this time. Until next week.